Callan Ward had worked on many broken machines in his life, but the mining moon called Rylos 9 always felt different. It was quiet, too quiet for a place that once held a busy research station. Now, most buildings lay in ruins, covered in dust and twisted metal. Callan's job was simple: repair the supply crawler that had broken down near the old alien outpost, and then return to the nearby human base. It should have been a routine task, nothing more. But deep down, he felt a strange tension in the air, as if something was waiting in the silence. He crouched next to the crawler, using his scanner to check the cracked fuel line. The harsh wind of the moon brushed dust across his boots, but Callan barely noticed. He was used to working alone, especially on dead worlds like this. He wiped sweat from his forehead and sighed. He wanted to finish fast, but the damage was worse than he expected. He needed parts. Maybe from one of the old research buildings nearby, he stood and walked toward a half-collapsed structure with alien carvings on the side. The research team that once lived here belonged to the Ariel, a gentle species known for peaceful science and music. They had abandoned this moon months ago because of pirate attacks that spread across the sector. Callan stepped carefully, scanning the area for leftover energy signatures. Most readings were weak, but something caught his attention. A faint signal coming from deeper inside the ruins. It didn't look like a weapon or an old machine. It felt warm, alive. Callan paused. He had two choices: ignore it and finish the crawler, or check the ruins and make sure no one needed help. His heart made the choice for him. He adjusted his helmet light and entered the dark hallway. The inside smelled of burnt metal and dust. Walls were cracked, and the floor was uneven. Callan had walked through many abandoned outposts, but something about this one felt different. He kept walking until his scanner beeped softly. He followed the signal down a narrow corridor where most of the ceiling had collapsed. He leaned down, shining his light between broken metal beams and shattered equipment. That's when he heard a small, shaky sound. Something like breathing mixed with a soft whimper. Callan froze. Someone was there. He lowered himself and spoke gently. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. Only the sound of air trembling in fear. He moved a beam carefully, making just enough space to see what was hiding behind it. In the shadows, curled into a tight ball, was a small figure with pale lavender skin, long silver hair, and faint glowing marks along her arms. She wasn't much older than a human teenager. She looked terrified, her eyes wide with fear, her body shaking as if expecting pain. She gasped when she saw him. Her voice was a whisper, broken and full of fear. "Please, don't hurt me, human." Callan's heart tightened. He had seen fear before, but this level of terror was different. She must have gone through something horrible. He lifted both hands slowly to show he had no weapons drawn. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help. You're safe now." The girl shook her head quickly, pressing herself against the wall. Her voice was barely audible. "Humans. Dangerous. Everyone said humans destroy everything." Callan knelt down slowly, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I'm not like the ones you heard about. I'm just an engineer. Look, no weapons, no armor for fighting, just tools." He gently placed his tool pouch on the floor to show he meant no harm. She watched him with wide eyes, trying to understand if he was telling the truth. Her body trembled with exhaustion. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Callan reached into his emergency pack and pulled out a small water pouch. "Here," he said quietly. "You need this more than I do." She stared at it, unsure. Then she looked at Callan again. Her fear didn't vanish, but it softened just a little. Slowly she reached out and took the pouch with shaking hands. She drank a tiny sip, then another, as if worried it might disappear. "What's your name?" Callan asked. After a long silence, she whispered, "Lysera." "That's a beautiful name," he said with a warm smile. "Lysera, I need to get you out of here. The structure isn't safe. Can you walk?" She tried to stand, but winced in pain and fell back against the wall. Callan saw a bruise on her leg and a torn patch on her wrist where a device had been broken. He looked around and assessed the situation. There was no way she could walk out on her own. "Okay," he said gently. "I'm going to carry you. Only if you're okay with it." Lysara's eyes locked on his, full of hesitation. She whispered again, "You won't hurt me?" Callan shook his head. "I would never hurt you." He moved carefully, giving her time to see his every motion. When he finally lifted her, she flinched at first, expecting harm. But Callan held her securely in his arms, steady and gentle. She was light to light. She had clearly been starving for days. As he walked, she clung weakly to his jacket. Still unsure, but slowly realizing he truly wanted to help. When they reached the crawler, Callan placed her inside the warm cabin and wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. She watched him, confused by his kindness. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Because you needed help," Callan said simply. "And helping people is the right thing to do." His answer seemed to surprise her more than anything else. She lowered her eyes, processing his words. Everything she had been taught about humans had painted them as violent creatures who only cared about war and power. But this human was different. Callan checked her wrist device and frowned. "This is broken, but I'll fix it. It might help us find your people." Lysara's eyes widened. "My people? Are they alive?" "I don't know," Callan said honestly. "But we'll find out." She nodded slowly, her eyes filling with both hope and fear. Callan repaired the crawler's fuel line with the spare parts he found earlier. As he worked, Lysara watched him carefully. She noticed how gentle he was, how patient, and how he never raised his voice. For the first time in many days, she felt a tiny spark of safety. Callan finished the repairs just as distant engines echoed across the canyon. He froze and looked toward the horizon. Several ships were approaching the same pirate faction known for attacking. Vulnerable alien settlements, Lysara's face drained of color. "They're back." Callan quickly climbed into the crawler. "Then we leave right now." He started the engine, and the crawler rumbled to life. Dust rose behind them as they sped away from the ruins. Lysara looked back at the collapsed building where she had hidden for so long. Her heart raced, but for the first time, she wasn't running alone. Callan kept his eyes on the path ahead. "Don't worry. I'll keep you safe." Lysara looked at him again, truly seeing him this time. He wasn't what she expected. He wasn't like the frightening stories about humans. He was calm, protective, and unexpectedly kind. She pulled the thermal blanket closer around her and whispered to herself, "Maybe. Not all humans are monsters." As the crawler moved across the barren wasteland, she watched the sky with a mix of fear and curiosity. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew one thing with certainty. The human who rescued her was not the enemy she feared. His presence felt steady, like a small light in a world full of shadows. The pirate ships circled in the distance, searching for something, maybe for her, maybe for loot. Callan tightened his grip on the controls. He didn't know what kind of trouble they would face, but he knew he wouldn't abandon Lysara. She had suffered enough, and he felt a strange responsibility to protect her. She glanced at him again, her voice soft but clearer than before. "Thank you for not hurting me." Callan looked at her and gave a gentle nod. "You're safe with me. I promise." And as they rode across the rough ground of the lonely moon, Lysara realized his words held a warmth she had never expected from a human. For the first time since her world fell apart, she felt hope again, fragile, small, but real. Their journey was only beginning, but already something had changed in her heart. The human she once feared had become the person she trusted most. The crawler moved across the rocky wasteland with a steady hum, but inside the cabin, the air felt tense. Callan kept both hands on the controls as he checked the sky again. The pirate ships were still distant shapes, moving slowly over the canyon, searching for signs of life. He knew the crawler was old, and its engines made too much noise. If the pirates scanned the area carefully, they might detect it. But he had no choice. He had to get Lysara as far away from the ruins as possible. Lysara sat wrapped in the thermal blanket, watching Callan with a mixture of worry and wonder. His face was calm, focused. Every once in a while, he glanced at her to make sure she was okay. No one from her species had ever looked at her with such gentle concern. Most humans she had heard about were described as loud, intimidating, or dangerous. But this one seemed careful with every word he spoke, every movement he made. After a long silence, Callan finally spoke. "Where were you when the pirates attacked your people?" Lysera took a slow breath. Her voice trembled. "My family came here for research. We were studying the mineral fields. When the pirates came, we tried to hide. They took some of us. Others ran. I got trapped in the ruins. I thought they would come back." Callan nodded quietly. "I'm sorry. You must have been terrified." She lowered her eyes. "I thought I would die there. When I saw you, I thought you were with them." Callan shook his head. "Humans have problems, but most of us would never hurt an innocent person. I'm sorry they scared you. Not all of us are like that." Lysera held the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I see that now." The crawler bounced over a rock, and Callan slowed down. Ahead of them was a steep ridge leading to a flat plain. He tapped the screen on his dashboard. The map flickered with static. The outdated system wasn't good at reading terrain, especially with damaged satellites above the moon. "We're about an hour from the old mining tunnels," he said. "If we can reach them, we can hide there for the night." Lysera looked nervous. "You know this moon well?" "Enough to get around," Callan replied. "I've repaired machines here for months. I know most of the safe paths." That answer made her relax slightly. As they continued forward, Lysera kept watching Callan's hands. They were steady, but she could see tiny scars on his fingers, proof of years of work with tools and machines. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a fighter. He was a builder, a repairman, someone who tried to fix things instead of breaking them. That alone made him different from the rumors she had grown up hearing. Callan noticed her staring and gave a small smile. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated before speaking. "I don't understand why you're helping me. You could have left. You don't even know who I am." Callan shrugged lightly. "You didn't need to be someone important. You were scared and alone. That was enough." His words were simple, but they made her chest feel warm. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even among her own people. The crawler continued for several minutes until a sudden beeping noise came from the scanner. Callan's eyes widened. "Damn, they're scanning the area again." Lysera tensed. "Did they find us?" "Not yet," Callan said. "But we need cover." He turned the crawler sharply, driving toward the base of a cliff. The engine growled loudly, and dust rose behind them like a cloud. Callan guided the machine into a narrow canyon where the walls created natural shadows. "Hold on," he warned. The crawler slid slightly on the loose gravel before slowing to a stop behind a large boulder. Callan killed the engine and dimmed the cabin lights. Lysera listened to the silence outside. Her heart raced. Then she heard a distant engine humming above them. A pirate scout ship hovered overhead for several minutes. Lysera held her breath. She could feel fear rise inside, or like cold water filling her lungs. Callan placed a calm hand on the crawler's wall to steady himself. He watched the scanner patiently. He didn't speak, didn't move fast, didn't panic. His stillness helped Lysera breathe easier. She was used to fear, but not to someone who guided her through it. Finally, the ship moved away. Callan exhaled slowly. "We're okay for now." Lysera released the breath she had been holding. "How did you stay so calm?" He chuckled softly. "You get used to close calls when you work on dangerous moons. Panic never helps. Thinking does." Relaxed tone made her smile for the first time since they met. It was small, barely noticeable, but Callan caught it and returned the smile naturally. Without forcing it, they stayed hidden for a few more minutes before. Callan restarted the crawler and continued toward the tunnels. The sun of the nearby star had begun to set, casting the sky in a gentle pink glow. Shadows stretched across the rocky plains, and the temperature slowly dropped. After a while, Lysera spoke in a quiet voice. "Were you ever scared before? Truly scared?" Callan blinked, surprised by the question. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Yes. Plenty of times. I'm human. We feel fear. But fear isn't a reason to run away from someone who needs help." Lysera studied his face. She felt her fear changing into something else, trust. As they neared the mining tunnels, the ground became flatter and more stable. Old markers and rusted equipment lay scattered across the area. The tunnels themselves had been abandoned for years, but Callan remembered inspecting them once with a survey crew. "We'll be safe inside," he said. He parked the crawler near the entrance and helped Lysera down carefully. She leaned lightly on his shoulder, still weak from her time inside the ruins. The tunnel entrance was dark, but Callan turned on his wrist light. They walked inside together. The air was cool, and the sound of dripping water echoed softly through the space. Callan found a small maintenance room off to the side and guided her in. There were old crates, a few dusty chairs, and metal shelves filled with forgotten tools. It wasn't comfortable, but it was shelter. Lysera sat on one of the crates, pulling the blanket around her. Callan worked quietly, setting up a portable heater and checking their supplies. "How long will we stay here?" she asked. "Just tonight," Callan replied. "Tomorrow, we'll find your people if they're nearby. We'll follow the signal from your wrist device once I fix it." Lysera looked down at her broken device. "I didn't think I would ever see them again." Callan knelt in front of her and examined the broken wires. "You survived. That means you'll see them. You're stronger than you think." She looked at him with surprise. "You believe that?" "I do," he said simply. He worked on the device quietly for several minutes, using a small toolkit from his belt. Lysera watched him with curiosity. Every movement he made was careful and patient. Humans, she realized, were much more complex than the stories had claimed. When the device finally flickered to life with a soft glow, Lysera gasped. "It works?" Callan smiled proudly. "It's connecting to the aerial network. If any survivors are nearby, it will show their signal by morning." Lysera felt tears form in her eyes, but she brushed them away quickly. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to repay me," he answered. "Just get better. That's enough." They shared a quiet moment, sitting in the dim light of the maintenance room. Outside, the moon's night grew cold, but inside, the heater warmed the air. Lysera relaxed for the first time in days. After a long silence, she spoke softly. "Callan, when I first saw you, I thought you were going to hurt me. I was so sure." "I know," Callan said gently. "I saw it in your eyes. But I'm glad you gave me a chance." Lysera took a deep breath. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Callan felt something warm inside his chest at those words. "Good, because tomorrow might be challenging. We'll need to move carefully, but I'll protect you." Lysera looked at him with quiet trust. She had lost her fear. She had lost her hesitation. This one human, had changed everything she believed. She leaned back slightly, feeling the warmth of the heater and the security of Callan's presence nearby. For the first time, she felt safe enough to close her eyes as she drifted into sleep. Callan kept watch near the doorway, listening for any signs of danger. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would keep his promise to Lysera, and somewhere deep in the tunnels. Her repaired device continued to blink softly, searching for her people, and slowly connecting to a signal that neither of them knew was much closer than they expected. The night inside the mining tunnel passed slowly, but it was calmer than anything Lysera had experienced in days. She slept with her knees pulled up beneath the blanket, breathing softly. Callan sat against the cold wall near the doorway, keeping guard. He didn't allow himself to sleep deeply. Every few minutes he listened for footsteps, engines, or voices. But the tunnels remained quiet, holding only the distant sound of dripping water. When the first faint light of morning filtered through the cracks above the tunnel entrance, Callan finally let out a long breath. They had made it through the night. He turned to check on Lysera and found her awake, watching him with gentle eyes. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. Callan shrugged with a tired smile. "I slept a little. Enough." Lysera shook her head. "You stayed awake to protect me. That's what friends do," Callan said simply. The word friends made Lysera pause. It wasn't something she expected from a human she had met only yesterday, yet she didn't reject it. She felt that somewhere between fear and survival, They had formed something quiet and real. Callan stood and stretched his arms. "Let's check your wrist device. It should have gathered more signals overnight." Lysera held out her arm. The small device blinked softly with a blue light. Callan pressed a few buttons and waited as the screen loaded. Lysera leaned closer, nervous. Suddenly, the device displayed 3 nearby pulses, 3 aerial signals. Lysera gasped. "My people. They're alive." Callan smiled. "And close. Less than an hour from here." Her eyes shined with hope. But Callan's smile slowly faded when he noticed something else. The signals were moving, and not freely. They were clustered together, shifting in small circles. "They're not traveling," Callan said quietly. "That pattern. It looks like they're being held somewhere." Lysera's face tightened with worry. "By the pirates?" "Maybe," Callan said. "But we'll find out." "We move now." They packed up quickly. Callan grabbed the heater and folded it away. Lysera wrapped the blanket around her shoulders for warmth as they stepped out into the cool morning air. The sun was just rising, painting the sky orange. The crawler sat where they left it, covered in thin dust. Callan helped Lysera climb in, then started the engine. As they moved across the plains, Lysera watched the blinking dots on her device. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if they're hurt? What if we're too late?" Callan kept his voice calm. "We're not too late. And you're not alone. I'll get them out." Lysera nodded, trusting him completely. The signals led them across a rocky plateau toward a valley lined with old mining structures. Smoke rose faintly from one of the buildings, too thin for a fire, too steady for a natural vent. Callan narrowed his eyes. "That looks like a camp," he said. Lysera swallowed. "Is that where they are?" Callan slowed the crawler and parked behind a ridge. "We walk from here." The two stepped onto the rough ground. Callan scanned the area with a small handheld detector. Several energy signatures showed up, a mix of old machines and newer pirate tech. "Definitely pirates," he whispered. "But it's a small group." Lysera looked toward the distant structure. Her heart pounded at the thought of her people being inside, scared and trapped. "What will we do?" Callan knelt and opened his toolkit. "First, I disable their power grid. That will darken the cameras, alarms, and drones. Then we get your people and run." Lysera watched him prepare tools, surprised at how calm he was. "You've done this before?" Callan chuckled. "Not exactly like this. But humans are good at improvising." They moved carefully along the ridge, staying low. When they reached the edge of the pirate camp, Callan pointed toward a metal box attached to the wall. "That's the main control hub." Lysera watched as he sneaked forward, moving like someone who had learned survival skills by necessity, not by choice. He opened the control box quietly and began twisting wires and rerouting current. Sparks flickered silently. The camp lights blinked and went dark. Automated drones in the distance froze and fell still. Voices inside the building grew loud with confusion. "They lost power," Lysera whispered. Callan nodded. "Good, now let's get your people." He guided her to the side entrance. The door was locked, but he used a small tool to override the mechanism. Within seconds, it slid open. Inside was a long hallway lit only by sunlight leaking through cracks. Lysera followed closely, her heart pounding. They moved through the hall until they reached a room with a metal grate. Inside were 3 Ariel survivors, 2 adults, and 1 small child. When they saw Lysera, their eyes filled with tears. "Lysera," one of the adults cried. Lysera ran to the grate, gripping the bars. "I found help. We're getting you out." Callan approached and examined the lock. "Stand back." He grabbed a small cutter from his belt and sliced through the metal latch. The grate swung open, and Lysera rushed in to hug her people. For a moment, tears flowed freely. Callan stepped aside respectfully, giving them space. When Lysera pulled away, she introduced Callan. "This human saved me. And now, he saved all of you."
Oh.
The Ariel adults looked at Callan with surprise. Their eyes softened with gratitude. But their moment of relief ended when shouting echoed from deeper in the building. They noticed. Callan said, "We need to move." He led the group through a back corridor that opened into the mining yard behind the camp. But as they stepped outside, a pirate scout spotted them and raised an alarm. More shouts followed. Heavy footsteps pounded the ground. Lysera's people panicked, but Callan stepped in front of them protectively. "Stay behind me." Pirates appeared at the far end of the yard, pointing in their direction. Callan grabbed a piece of metal pipe from the ground, meant a weapon but enough to defend himself. Lysera touched his arm. "Callan, don't get hurt." Callan gave her a reassuring smile. "I won't, but I won't let them take you again." The pirates charged forward. Callan motioned for the Ariel to run toward the ridge. "Go. I'll hold them off for a moment." Lysera's voice shook. "No, you can't trust me," he said firmly. Lysera hesitated, then followed her people. Callan ran in the opposite direction, drawing the pirates away. He dodged their grabs and ducked behind an old machine. He knocked over a stack of crates to block their path. The pirates cursed loudly, trying to climb over the debris. Callan kept moving, creating distractions, hitting pipes, tossing rocks, knocking over equipment. Anything to slow them down. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to buy time. Finally, he sprinted back toward the ridge. The pirates were close behind, but Callan didn't stop. When he climbed the ridge, Lysera reached out and grabbed his arm, helping him up. "You came back," she whispered. "I said I would," Callan replied. Breathing hard, they hurried to the crawler with the aerial survivors. As soon as they were inside, Callan started the engine. The crawler roared forward, just as the pirates reached the top of the ridge. They shouted and fired warning shots, but Callan drove faster, steering across rough ground until the camp disappeared behind them. Only when they were far away did Lysera exhale in relief. She looked at Callan with tears in her eyes. "You saved them," she said softly. "You saved all of us." Callan smiled, exhausted but proud. "I'm glad." The aerial survivors bowed their heads respectfully. Their culture rarely bowed, especially not to outsiders. But they did it for him. As the crawler neared the human base, Lysera watched the horizon thoughtfully. Everything she once feared about humans had shattered over the past day. This one human had risked everything for her and her people. Without asking for anything in return, when they reached a safe valley, Lysera stepped out and walked toward Callan. She placed her hand gently on his arm. "Callan, when we first met, I begged you not to hurt me." She shook her head softly. "But you became the reason I'm alive. My people are alive because of you." Callan felt warmth rise in his chest. "I just did what anyone should do," Lysera smiled, her eyes full of quiet trust. "No, you did more. You showed me that humans can be kind, brave, and good." Callan didn't know what to say. But Lysera wasn't finished. "You changed everything for me," she said. "I'm not afraid anymore." Callan gave a gentle nod. "Then that makes all of this worth it." And as the morning sun rose higher, casting warm light across the barren moon, Lysera stood beside the human she once feared, knowing he'd become the one person she trusted more than anyone in the galaxy. Their journey had begun with fear. It ended with hope.